So you've been fighting since, you said, 2005?
I think I started 2005. My first fight was 2006. I would have been 17. So I started training. I worked at a computer shop for like as an apprentice, fixing computers with my neighbor Daniel. One of the customers was a pro kickboxer, Shane Meads. Used to fix his computer, and then he brought it in. It was just his background was him kicking someone in the head. It was great, and we were like, "Fuck yeah, that's sick." And me and Daniel used to go to the gym and do weights and stuff like that, but we weren't enjoying it. And I would have been 15, 16 at that point. And then we went and watched him fight, and he broke this dude's arm in like round one with a kick. And we were like, yes, that's sick. Then after that, he come back in, and we're like, hey man, how do we get into this? So that looks fun to do. We want to do some training and want to learn how to defend. Did that. Shane he trained at Bulldog in Castle Hill, but he lived in Greystanes where I lived. So he took us to Paul Grimer in South Wentworthville, just down the road, and that was it. They were locked in for the last, how many years? That's been now 15 years. I've got him tattooed on my on my arm. The gym represents. So big shout out to Paul Grimer. He's shaped me, not as a fighter, like not just a fighter, as a human as well. So it's good family friend of mine too.
And has it always been Muay Thai for you, or have you ever thought about potentially, like, obviously getting into the MMA side of things or stuff, or you're a Muay Thai fighter?
So when I started, kickboxing was probably more prominent in New South Wales and Melbourne. Muay Thai was there. Like, it was definitely, the ball was rolling, but it wasn't. There was more kickboxing fights on the card than Muay Thai rules. And so to get fights, I switched between the two, but I found kickboxing not as a good of a fit as like full Thai rules to me. And there was also like modified Thai rules. There was like all these different sets of rules. You could knee to the body, no knees to the head, no elbows. Knees to the body and head, no elbows, and then full Thai rules, knees and elbows to the head. So my first fight was padded, full Thai rules, knees and elbows to the head. And then they found a loophole in the legislation. We got rid of the pads. So all my amateur fights were mostly without pads. So pro rules, just amateur rounds.
I was actually going to ask that because I've seen a couple of your fights, and obviously I saw your pro debut, but I also saw some of your amateur fights. And I was like, when I was watching that, the only difference I could notice was that you got a little bit more color on your back tattoo. That was it, right? Like, no, but seriously, like, because I was watching that, and there were knees, there were elbows. Usually for the MMA side of things, if it's amateurs, there's shin pads and so, or like even headgear sometimes for some of these events. And I was looking at some of your amateur fights, and I was like, so what is the actual difference? Like, as I said, the only difference I could see is that you had more color in your pro fight on your back than you did in your amateurs. In regards to your frame, to as I said, the rules that are being used, I just felt like it was the same.
Yeah. So at around, I think it was 2012, 2013, the New South Wales government brought in the Combat Sport Authority. Probably had to deal with them to be in the corner of a fight. It was largely self-regulated industry before then. As I said, my first fight was like headgear, chest guard, elbow pads, shin pads. That's the rules that we thought we had to do. And then the loophole was found. Muay Thai wasn't in the legislation, so it was balls to the wall, go for it. No pads, no headgear. I strongly disapprove of headgear anyway. I think it does more damage than good.
And why do you say that?
Bigger target, restricted vision. It can heat up your brain peak physical exertion. It can get pulled over your eyes, so another loss of vision. I know that's happened. I've seen it happen as I've judged fights in Australia too afterwards. A false sense of security, so accumulated blows to the head. If you were supposed to get stopped with 5 hits and you received 20 because the headgear stopped you, what your body's natural response to being knocked out, then I think copping 20 hits when you were supposed to stop at 5 is worse. The only thing it might be good for would be stopping cuts in amateur boxing with head clashes or Muay Thai with elbows. So,
well, that's that. But like as I say, like I originally always thought, they'd do modified rules, i.e. you couldn't throw elbows and stuff. But I guess, when Muay Thai is all about what's it called? The art of 8.
Art of 8, yep.
Limbs, or is it 8 limbs or whatever? So I guess
8 limbs, yeah.
Yeah, I guess taking elbows out would just totally go against what Muay Thai is anyway, and that's probably why they keep it. Because I know, for instance, like here now in Sydney with MMA, for instance, you can knee, but only to the body. You can't knee to the head, for instance. We can't use elbows. So, and because of that, they also restrict, like for instance, spinning attacks, because they say, you go for a spinning back fist, and you misjudge the distance, all of a sudden that fist becomes a spinning back elbow, and so for us in the MMA world here, I don't know about so much in the States, but over here, like they do limit what you can use.
Yeah, so that'll be the case here now. And after the regulation came in New South Wales, they put elbow pads on, they put the headgear on. I don't think they limited any like back elbow. I think back elbows are allowed. I'm not too sure because it's been a minute since I've checked out the rules there. So I had two amateur fights here in the States after being a amateur fighter in Australia without any of that regulation. So 12 to 6 elbows were legal, spinning back elbows were legal, knees to the head were legal, and then coming here and they're going, no knees to the head, no 12 to 6 elbow. You got to wear pads on your elbows. You got to wear shin pads. I'm like, oh God, I need to turn pro. So we
because it is hard, right? Because you end up just, I think it's the same thing. You end up then spending that time backstage more worried about obviously these rules and potentially not breaking any of them than you do about the fight, because like a lot of it becomes natural instinct after a while, right? So, and that's what I always find, like especially with different commissions as well, that you can go to Vegas and get a different rule set than say New York or whatever. Like I always find that weird too, because I had Sharpie on who's obviously a ref over here and things like that, and I say, does it make it even difficult to judge and to ref when constantly, depending on what state you're in, you're actually playing by a different set of rules, and I think it ends up becoming more confusing than anything else.
Yeah, a unified rule system would be good, but when people are in control and they want to keep that control, then they're not going to team up with other people and help the sport grow.